Over the last 18 months of owning my Koenigsegg, I became sick of being gaslighted and blamed for a lapse in service, which was from the previous owner. Well, it did until the Koenigsegg Regera bricked last night. We drove it 4 miles and it's already completely broke down. I'm hoping they can right this with the Jesco, but the Regera is a total crap show, and I am not the only one that says this. There are tons of Regera owners and Agera owners, people that you know and you recognize the name of, that just hate the quality of this car. This is insane. Oh my God, it's like hemorrhaging out of there, bro. What? I have 2 Koenigseggs bricked.
Koenigsegg has spent years selling this idea that they build the most advanced road cars on the planet. And honestly, for a long time, nobody really argued with that. The cars look insane. The engineering feels otherworldly. And if you were lucky enough to buy one, you were just happy to be part of that tiny club. But over the past couple of years, that perfect image started to crack. And not quietly. It cracked in the most public, awkward, impossible to ignore way imaginable for a brand that worked so hard to stay flawless. A $4 million car catches fire minutes into its first drive. A billionaire owner calls the CEO Thanos on Instagram.
And I am not the only one that says this. There are tons of Regera owners and Agera owners, people that you know and you recognize the name of, that just hate the quality of this car.
The CEO fires back, also on Instagram. Owners who had stayed silent for years suddenly start talking.
He speaks about his Regera that he bought used from a second-hand car dealer. It wasn't serviced for 3 years. It had a lot of updates it needed that it didn't have, that it should have had.
And once they do, a pattern starts to emerge. And the more it came out, the clearer it became that this was not just a bad year for Koenigsegg. This had been building for a very long time, and the only reason nobody knew about it was that the brand had been extraordinarily good at making sure nobody talked. So today, we're getting into all of it. How this started, why did it stay hidden for so long, and how bad it actually gets. The moment that really brought all of this into the open happened on June 15th, 2024, in Athens, Greece. There was a supercar rally called the 606 Motor Europe Tour, with around 70 cars traveling from Athens through Albania, Croatia, Italy, and eventually finishing in Monaco. Among those cars was a Koenigsegg Jesko Attack Inner Edition, finished in exposed carbon fiber with 24-karat gold accents. It was a genuinely stunning car. And according to reports, a business owner, Manny Koshbin, paid around $4 million for it, with the naked carbon option alone adding close to $500,000 to the total price.
If I'm thinking to go gold interior, we can do a special gold leaf, which I did on Phoenix. It's only $43,700, not bad.
The car had been delivered just weeks before and had covered only 124 miles since leaving the factory. 5 minutes after leaving the hotel where the rally started, while just cruising through the suburbs of Athens at low speed, the car caught fire. And not a small fire, the whole thing was completely gone by the time the fire crews arrived. The driver and passenger got out safely, but the car itself was just a pile of melted metal and shattered carbon fiber on the side of the road. And if that was not enough, someone was already selling pieces of raw carbon on Facebook Marketplace within hours, claiming they were authentic fragments of the destroyed car. The footage spread almost immediately. And to Koenigsegg's credit, they responded quickly. Christian von Koenigsegg personally sent an engineer to Athens to recover the wreckage. The car was shipped back to the factory, and every Jesco owner in the world at the time, all 28 of them, received an email asking them not to drive their cars until the cause was identified. That email was later obtained by the Egg Registry and made public. About 2 weeks later, Koenigsegg shared the results of their investigation. They ruled out the fuel tank, engine oil, and gearbox oil as possible causes. What they did find was a streak of hydraulic fluid on the road behind where the car had been driving. The conclusion was that a pressurized hydraulic hose had failed. Fluid escaped, contacted hot engine components, and ignited almost instantly. Koenigsegg said it would inspect every delivered Jesco, correct any improperly installed lines, and develop new software capable of detecting a pressure drop in under a second and automatically shutting the system down. The owner of the burned car was also promised a replacement vehicle. And look, that is a thorough response and it deserves to be acknowledged. But the question that nobody could really get past was pretty simple. If this was a manufacturing defect in how the hydraulic lines were installed, how did it make it through quality control on a $4 million car? That story might have started to fade if not for what happened a few months later. In September 2024, at the Supercar Owners Circle event, a Jesco Absolut, the top-speed-focused version of the Jesco, was filmed during a high-speed run with smoke and then flames shooting out of the exhaust. The video spread quickly, and Koenigsegg moved fast to address it. The company said this was not the same situation as the grease incident. According to Koenigsegg, the car had not caught fire in the traditional sense. They described it as an engine-related issue that caused smoke and flames through the exhaust, with no structural damage to the vehicle. But here's the reality. When a Koenigsegg had already burned to the ground in June, and then another one is seen producing flames just a few months later, the technical difference does not mean much to most people watching. From the outside, it looks like two Jescos and two fire-related incidents in the same year. And the speed at which Koenigsegg responded to clarify the second event suggests they understood exactly how bad those optics were going to be. What made it even more uncomfortable was how they framed it. Koenigsegg explained that the software patch developed after the grease fire likely prevented the September car from suffering a much worse outcome, because the system can now detect anomalies and shut the car down before things escalate. That sounds reassuring on the surface, but it also raises a harder question. It confirms that these cars operate in a space where catastrophic failure is a real enough risk that Koenigsegg felt the need to build a dedicated system just to stop something like that from happening again. Now, if the Athens fire is what put Koenigsegg's reliability issues on the map, the Steve Hamilton situation is what made it personal. Steve Hamilton isn't some random angry customer. He's a self-made billionaire from Wisconsin and the founder of the Hamilton Collection, a massive YouTube and Instagram presence built around one of the most impressive private hypercar collections in the US. Bugattis, Paganis, Lamborghinis, multiple Koenigsegg's. He has spent millions with the brand, including orders for a Regera, a Jesko, and a Gemera. In other words, he's exactly the kind of client Koenigsegg wants happy. His entire audience watches him buy, drive, and talk about these cars in real time. And he was very publicly unhappy. Hamilton bought a 2019 Regera second-hand through a third-party dealer. The Regera is one of Koenigsegg's most ambitious cars, a hybrid hypercar with a twin-turbo V8, 3 electric motors, around 1,500 horsepower, and no traditional gearbox. Instead, it uses Koenigsegg's direct drive system, which replaces gear changes with electric assistance. On paper, it's incredible. In practice, according to Hamilton, it was a nightmare. He said the car spent most of its life in service, constantly bouncing between shops and rarely being drivable for any meaningful stretch of time.
But there is a serious quality problem at Koenigsegg. More on that in a bit. Over the last 18 months of owning my Koenigsegg, I became sick of being gaslighted.
He later clarified some timing details, but the core issue didn't change. A car that cost close to $2 million simply wasn't working. By November 2025, he had enough. Hamilton posted an image on Instagram showing Christian von Koenigsegg, edited as Thanos from Marvel, with the caption, "I will no longer be silenced by Thanos von Koenigsegg. Deliver me my car." That post wasn't just about the Regera. He said his Jesco had been delayed for over 2 years.
I'm hoping they can write this with the Jesco, but the Regera is a total crap show, and I am not the only one that says this. There are tons of Regera owners and Agera owners, people that you know and you recognize the name of, that just hate the quality of this car.
Despite configuring it personally at the factory, his Gemera deposit had been sitting for nearly 5 years. And the line that really caught attention was when he said the number of Koenigsegg owners privately messaging him with their own horror stories would blow your mind. Christian von Koenigsegg responded publicly. He posted a video showing Hamilton's orange Jesco sitting on the factory floor, fully built and awaiting final checks. According to Christian, Hamilton's second payment didn't arrive until early 2025, and the final build spec wasn't locked until May, meaning the car was actually on schedule to ship by the end of November, exactly as communicated to Hamilton's dealer.
This guy, he put in his second payment for the car in the beginning of the year, and he's finally spec'd the car in May. When he had finalized his spec, we told his dealer that the car will ship end of November.
On the Regera, Christian explained that Hamilton bought the car secondhand with no documented service history for the previous 3 years. That meant missed software updates and maintenance that the car should have received under normal ownership. Even so, Koenigsegg still sent technicians to inspect and update the car at no cost as a goodwill gesture.
He speaks about his Regera that he bought used from a second-hand car dealer. It wasn't serviced for 3 years. It had a lot of updates it needed that it didn't have, that it should have had. We even flew out and helped with that because we wanted it to work and he had ordered a Jesko and so on. So we didn't even charge for it.
Then came the sharpest moment. Christian pointed out that the Jesco had not actually been fully paid for yet. Hamilton followed up with his own video. He admitted some of his timelines were off and said he believed the people at Koenigsegg genuinely cared. But he stood by his experience with the Regera, calling it a failure of quality. He also said other Agera and Regera owners, people well known in the community, had privately told him they were dealing with similar issues. And then, things took an even worse turn. Hamilton's Jesco was delivered around Christmas. Within days, his Regera suffered a high-voltage powertrain failure just 4 miles into its first public outing.
But we basically had it in service for about 4 straight months. We drove it 4 miles, and it's already completely broke down. Some high-voltage battery issue that sounds like it's going to spend another few months in the dealership.
Breaking down at a car meet in front of fans who had come specifically to see it. The very next day, his brand new Jesco, with only about 80 miles on the odometer, started leaking hydraulic fluid and triggered a brake system warning.
Now it's leaking hydraulic fluid and it's unusable, so. This is insane. Oh my God, it's like hemorrhaging out of there, bro. What? I have 2 Koenigsegg's bricked. I literally just got both of these yesterday and they're both bricked.
A $3 million car, not even past its break-in period, was already showing the same category of problem that had burned another Jesco to the ground in Athens just months earlier. At that point, it stopped looking like bad luck. It started looking like a pattern. Now, the obvious question is simple. Is Koenigsegg actually building unreliable cars, or is something more complicated going on? The honest answer is that it's a bit of both. Koenigsegg is a tiny manufacturer. At peak production, they build roughly 40 to 50 cars per year across all models. Ferrari, which most people already consider exclusive, builds around 14,000 cars annually. The scale is not even close. Koenigsegg is operating with a small team, creating brand new technology that often hasn't existed before, then putting it into production in very limited numbers and refining it along the way. Christian von Koenigsegg himself has acknowledged that these extreme cars can have issues, especially early in a production run, and that the company updates earlier cars over time to match later improvements. That explains a lot. A failed hydraulic line in a hand-built Jesco can realistically be a manufacturing or installation issue. A Regera with an advanced hybrid system that hasn't received consistent updates and maintenance can absolutely develop serious problems. These are not excuses, but they are plausible explanations. The bigger issue is structural. Koenigsegg builds some of the most technically ambitious cars in the world, prices them as if perfection is guaranteed, and delivers them to customers who now document everything publicly. The old culture, where wealthy collectors quietly stored their cars and handled problems behind closed doors, is fading. Today's owners are content creators and social media personalities who actively drive their cars and share every experience with a global audience. On top of that, Koenigsegg's service network is small. There are far fewer authorized dealers and technicians compared to brands like Ferrari. When something goes wrong, it can take weeks just to get a car into the shop. That delay doesn't necessarily mean indifference, but it does highlight a support structure that hasn't fully caught up with the company's ambitions or the expectations of its customers. There's one last piece of this story that says a lot about how Koenigsegg operates, and it hasn't gotten nearly as much attention as the fires or the Instagram arguments. The Gemera. Koenigsegg revealed the Gemera in March 2020 as a kind of moonshot, a 4-seat hypercar with over 1,700 horsepower. Room for 4 adults, a claimed range of more than 600 miles, and performance numbers that still sounded impossible, like 0 to 62 in under 2 seconds. People lost their minds. Orders came in. Deposits were placed. Then the plan changed. Originally, the Gemera was built around Koenigsegg's 3-cylinder, tiny friendly giant engine paired with electric motors. But once Koenigsegg offered the option of using the twin-turbo V8 from the Jesco instead, most customers chose it. That decision forced a massive re-engineering of the car, and with that, the timeline kept sliding. A car announced in 2020 was first promised for 2023. Then it became 2025. And for many customers, it still hasn't arrived. Steve Hamilton's deposit for his Gemera, placed years earlier, was still unresolved as of his November 2025 public complaint. For a car expected to cost around $1.7 million and marketed as the entry point into Koenigsegg ownership, asking customers to wait 5 or more years while the fundamental drivetrain of their car keeps changing is not a small issue. It's another example of the same pattern. Koenigsegg aims incredibly high, but the distance between what gets announced and what actually gets delivered can be long, unpredictable, and frustrating for the people who already paid their way in. So the question everyone is asking is whether any of this is actually enough to damage Koenigsegg as a brand. And honestly, probably not in the short term. Every Jesko is sold, every Gemera is sold, every CC 850 is sold. The waitlist for a new Koenigsegg extends well past delivery dates. So whatever is being said on social media, the people with the money are still committed. But reputations in this space are fragile in a specific way. These are not impulse buyers. They talk to each other, they talk to previous owners, and Hamilton already said that Regera and Regera owners, whose names people in this community would recognize, had been reaching out to him privately with the exact same complaints. If that private frustration ever becomes public frustration at scale, Koenigsegg has a much more serious problem on their hands. Because here's the reality. The engineering that comes out of that factory is genuinely extraordinary. Nobody is disputing that. But extraordinary engineering and flawless execution are two completely different things. And at $4 million a car, buyers have every right to expect both. The old way of managing this gap, through silence and reputation control, does not work anymore. The fires are visible now, literally and figuratively, and the owners have microphones. What Koenigsegg needs to do is close the gap between what they build and how they support it. Not by scaling back the ambition, but by building the service infrastructure and quality controls that actually match it. The engineering is there. The question is whether the operational side of the business can keep up. If it can, they come out of this stronger. If it cannot, those private DMs that Hamilton mentioned will eventually become the story that everyone knows. And that is a very different position for a brand that has spent 30 years being very careful about its image. Tuna no Crust, signing off.